Testing, testing.
It's 1:30. I'd like to call the meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission for July 18th, 2022 to order. We'll do a roll call. Commissioner Barnell.
Present.
Littlefield.
Here.
Commissioner Russell.
Here.
Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline. Ward 7 is vacant. Go to Commissioner George.
Here.
And Commissioner Cornett.
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to have a motion concerning approval of the minutes of the May 16, 2022 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Hale. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from, there you are, from Commissioner Russell. Do we have any discussion on the minutes? Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner Russell. Can we have your votes, please?
I hit yay.
Okay, item is approved. We're all in favor. We're going now to item 3, reports from Traffic Management Division in Council's office. Mr. Chai, anything, sir?
All right, you've got our monthly reports on yield signs and other control signs installed administratively. And as of this date, just for the Commission's information, we've got 130 intersections that are now running a leading pedestrian interval. So just for your information. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
We'll talk about it later.
Okay,
It's very exciting.
very good. And Councilor, do you have anything, sir?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Go on to the consent docket, item 4A. Is there anybody here to speak against the consent docket item 4A? Staff, do you have any input on 4A?
This particular item is merely an amendment to an item previously approved by the Commission when the applicant turned in construction documents for angle parking on the north side of Canal Road. The dimensions on the plans were different from those as approved by the Commission and as passed by ordinance by the City Council. So this is really just a bookkeeping matter to keep our records straight and to match conditions as they will actually be built.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion concerning item 4A, please?
Motion to approve.
And that's from Commissioner Barnell. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Cornett. Any discussion on 4A? Okay, motion to approve 4A from Commissioner Barnell, seconded by Commissioner Cornett. Votes, please. Okay, item has passed. We're all in favor. We go on now to items 5A, Connie Crew, to set up all-way stop control at Ashby Terrace at Southeast 69th Street. Ms. Crew, do you have anything you'd like to say to us? You come on up. I need your name, your address, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Yes, my name's Connie Crew, and I live at 6817 Ashby Terrace, Oklahoma City 73149. This is our second attempt to get stop sign on the corner of Southeast 69th and Ashby Terrace. We're part of a Cloverleaf neighborhood, which runs from Southeast 59th Street to I-240 between Shields and I-35. This particular area is between Southeast 66th to 74th Street on Ashby Terrace. That's a through street, and there is no traffic control there except for east-west at Southeast 69th. It's the other only through street in this neighborhood, and it is widely traveled. It's a very busy intersection, and it's within 2 blocks of an elementary school, Hayes Elementary. 69th is the only through street going east and west, and I-35 Service Road on the east past the elementary school to Stiles, which is a dead end and has a 3-way stop at that corner. Adults, children with and without parents walk this area. Our neighborhood has no sidewalks, so everyone usually walks in the street. The lighting is poor at night, with only 2 street lights at Southeast 69th and another at 68th on Ashby Terrace. Because we mostly have single-lane driveways and there are more cars than places to park them, so there are many cars parked along the curbs, which makes it difficult for traffic to maneuver, especially along Ashby Terrace. Ashby Terrace is currently a through street from South I-35 Service Road at Southeast 74th to Southeast 66th on the north end. And there's currently a yield sign going east and west at 69th. I don't know the number of accidents at this intersection, but I know that it is a dangerous intersection from my own experiences of almost having accidents at that corner. You see the required signatures of my neighbors who also think this would be a good thing for the safety of our neighborhood. The city just recently improved this intersection by replacing our worn-out asphalt surface with a completely new concrete intersection, as well as the corner of intersection on 68th and Ashby Terrace. We've never had any concrete surfaces before in our neighborhood, so it was a very wonderful thing. We wanted some more on Sears, but they just patched the potholes this week. So our request is for you to decide. We hope you will agree with us and approve this request. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else want to speak on item 5A? Staff?
All right, you've got our comments before you. From a numerical standpoint, based on the city's criteria for using always stop control and those in the MUTCD, this location does not have a sufficient volume for using always stop control. However, Ms. Crew has provided a petition that indicates that 24 of 27 residents within the petition canvas area did support the request. So she's standing at an 89% in support of her request. And action on the item will be at the discretion of the commission. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have on this application.
Thank you. Do we have a motion concerning item 5A?
Can I ask my question first?
Oh, go ahead, sir.
She mentioned this was her second attempt. I don't remember a first attempt in the last few years. Do you remember what?
2018,
I was probably not on the commission at that time. Does anybody remember?
we asked for a stop sign.
Okay, ma'am, could you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
What was the talk that?
In 2018, we had asked for a stop sign just going south on Ashby. But because it's yield signs going east and west, it was denied, but I didn't know the rules. And so we didn't ask for a 4-way stop. So I was not able to redo that again at that time. And so, because of the lockdown and whatever else was going on. So it's taken us this long, and I had some people to help me get signatures this time
So, ma'am, this is your first time on this issue.
on this particular issue with the 4-way stop.
The other one you had was the other intersection. That's there
The other one
next
was
to
a stop just on one end of the street, and they didn't allow that.
you. Good? All right.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. All right, so we're looking for a motion for 5A.
I'll move approval of the application for the
Okay, we have
four-way
a-
stop.
We have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner George. Do we have a second, please?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Littlefield. Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Your votes, please. Item has passed. We're all in favor. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we go on now to item 5B, Godfrey Butler, Planning Director. Many items on here, they're up on the screen. Basically, it's doing a lot of work on Main Street, and it's to remove 2-hour time limit parking from Pennsylvania to Western, and then to move the commercial loading zone from one spot to a different spot, and to establish several physically disabled parking spaces. Okay, Mr. Butler? And planning staff?
Good afternoon, Jeff Butler, Planning Director, and also Justin Henry, our Transportation Program Planner. Just here to talk to you about this project today. So if we want to go ahead and advance to the next slide, we'll get started. So this project is a resurfacing and restriping of Main Street, and the purpose is to accommodate a bike facility and specifically bike lanes. So we've been before this commission before talking about Bike Walk OKC, our city's bike and pedestrian plan, and this is one of the facilities that's planned in that plan, and it actually connects existing facilities right now. So they're going west from here. A bike facility starts on Main Street. It starts out as a Tier 3, so you'll see Sharrows in the lane. And then once it crosses, well, actually it starts before then, but there's a newer facility from between Classen and Main that was built in anticipation of this. And in addition to that, there's an even newer facility at that intersection of Western and Main Street where we put in a protected intersection. So what this facility does is it connects the general Pershing bike lane to the bike lane that already exists on the eastern side of Main Street. So just a project summary and important considerations before we kind of get going into the detail. So the on-street parking is very lightly used in this area. Over the past, even pre-pandemic and recently, we've driven it several times, and as we go along this entire stretch of Main Street, we count between 4 and 7 cars parked on street at any given time during the day, during standard business hours. So on-street parking is very lightly used, which is one of the reasons we felt confident bringing this forward, and we felt like this would be a good project and a good place to do what's often called a road diet, where you take lanes that are really not necessary based on traffic counts and design a different facility. So traffic counts are low, low enough that we actually don't have the numbers, but based on observation, there's not a whole lot of traffic and not a whole lot of parking. That's not to say, though, that there aren't people parking on street and that have parking needs, and we'll go through and address individual properties. Other considerations, I mentioned the existing intersection project, which was based on the assumption that we would have bike lanes feeding into it. And also the Jesus House, you may be aware, used to have a lot of traffic on Main Street that would queue up in the right lane for, I don't know, several blocks. So they have actually already gone ahead and changed their routing to accommodate this project. So if we could move forward to the next one. So here are the petitions. There's a couple of pie charts, and you can see there that on the left that groups all the positive and the neutrals into one green piece of pie there, and the disagrees are the 33%. You can see on the right the breakout with the neutrals in yellow. So here's the kind of the breakdown. What we want to do is focus on those who were concerned about, those who were in disagreement, and wanted to make sure that we are addressing any concerns that they might have, any needs they might have regarding parking. So 21 of the petitions were in disagreement. 18 of those have properties or have existing off-street parking. One of those was boarded up. The remaining 2 can't accommodate on-street parking. They can't accommodate it now. They won't be able to accommodate it in the future due to driveways, overhead doors, fire hydrants, and other things. We're going to go back to that real quick, sorry. So on those parking lots, the off-street parking, we did not observe any that were at full capacity. They all seem to have plenty of capacity. So with that, yeah, if you could go ahead. So here's the conditions in 2019. And I'll give you a little more background. We first did the outreach to the property owners a couple of years ago, and had, I think, a little more support than we have now. There were a couple that changed their minds, is my understanding. So we've gone essentially a couple rounds, but a lot of outreach has been done, a lot of kind of door knocking and just trying to address concerns, and The project itself, as Public Works went and did the repaving and the recurbing, they've done a lot of work to accommodate the concerns and the needs of the business owners as far as, driveways and so forth. So with that, we'll kind of move forward and go through the project. Here's the extent that we're talking about. As I said, it connects with General Pershing and continues to Western. And the project is available online. So we can go to the next one. Here's the what we call a protected intersection or a Dutch intersection. This is a pilot in the city. This is the first one we've done. It essentially allows cyclists to do a two-stage left turn. If they're not comfortable doing a left turn through the intersection, they can stop and wait, and those I don't want to say barriers, that's probably too strong of a word, but conveniently known as armadillos, those black and white striped products on the ground there, prevent cars and provide a little bit of protection. Oftentimes it's curbing, concrete curbing, but this being a pilot project, this is what it looks like right now. So this is where we'll be starting at. As I said, some properties have overhead doors, which you see there on the top right. There are a lot of bike racks installed that private property owners have done. We've seen actually a fair amount of cyclists on the street already, so it seems clear, and I couldn't tell you how much they might have existed before the bike lanes to the west and east, but right now we see cyclists there that are using the facility, and we hope to accommodate them better. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to Justin. We'll start from Western, and we'll move to the west. And we'll talk about, we figured it would be appropriate to talk about just those that oppose the project and kind of look at what concerns or issues they may have and how it would look pre and post project for them. Just because the others, we thought, well, there's no reason to focus on them. They're in favor of the project. Presumably they're okay. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Justin, and I'll also be here to answer questions and chime in as necessary, but he'll take you through the property by property analysis.
Great, thanks, Jeff. One other thing I might emphasize too is originally in Bike Walk OKC, this was being done as a Tier 1 protected bike facility. But after engaging the neighborhood, we heard a lot of concerns about parking, and so we redesigned the project to include 74 on-street parking spaces across the whole mile. So on this first block here, kind of a western decline, there were 3 property owners that were in disagreement. This block probably has less on-street parking than any of the others, and there were a couple of reasons for that. First is that there is a fire hydrant located there in the middle in front of that 1120, and that prevented us from being able to stripe anything in there, as well as the need to taper the street to allow a turn signal there, a left turn. The property to the north already has an existing parking lot that we haven't observed at capacity. They also, as part of the project design, requested a very large open curb line, which prevented us from being able to stripe anything in right there. Thanks. Here, I might move to the middle. All right, so this is just another look at that property on the south side and kind of some of the reasons we couldn't include more on-street parking there. There's the fire hydrant at the corner, and then we had to have room to taper for a left turn. All right, this is the property on the north side of the street. You can see it's kind of an industrial usage, but it has a kind of a large surface parking lot that we left with an open curb line in front of it. Okay, moving to the next block, there were 3 property owners in disagreement here. Actually, I'm sorry, 4. 3 of the 4 have surface parking lots off-street. There's also on-street parking included on the south side of the street, but as we move forward, you'll see kind of the conditions there. You'll notice kind of the before and after pictures in a lot of these parcels, and kind of one of the cultures of this neighborhood before we started the project was parking on the sidewalk rather than in the external lane of traffic where parking was kind of time limited already, and the speed of travel on the street kind of made it feel unsafe. So yeah, and then so moving into the next one, this is the motorcycle business, and they have an off-street parking. Most of these businesses also have a rear-facing alley so that they have a spot for loading. We have observed a loading truck here once, and so that could be a bit of an issue for them. But again, the parking lot we haven't observed it at capacity yet. And you can see one of the changes since we resurfaced the street was that we're seeing a lot more compliance with parking in their parking lot rather than on the newly rebuilt sidewalks. All right, moving down the street, notice there's kind of this is one of the parcels, the one on the bottom that you can see. It's one of the ones we're kind of counting as not having an off-street parking lot out of our 4 because it doesn't really have a striped area, but you can tell that it's a vacant building, but they have room in the front of their building to park some cars if there needs to be, but it's been vacant for quite some time and all the doors and windows are boarded up. Yeah, and then moving down the street in this next block, there was only one property owner in disagreement, and the majority, we're still adding on-street spaces just to the east, you can see, but this property owner, which it's mostly a surface parking lot, was in disagreement. But part of the project did rebuild their sidewalk and curb as part of this. All right, as we continue moving down, you can see there's 3 more parcels here. All of them have significant off-street parking. The parcel first on the north has a recently renovated bus stop in front of it. Again, kind of a light industrial usage, off-street parking in front of it. And there's going to be off-street spaces added to the south side of the street, so it's a pretty short distance to cover if you did need to park on the street here. And then moving down, we see another parcel. This is kind of the 2 sides of the same business. It's got an off-street parking space on the west side of the building, and then it has kind of off-street spaces that are up against the street on the east side of the building. And then the parcel on the south side of the street here, they manufacture pallets, but they have 2 off-street spaces, and the majority of the road frontage is covered by what would be added as on-street parking spaces. As we continue to move west, you see there's another 4 owners here that own 5 properties, and I can kind of talk about each of those. So, and feel free to ask me if there's any specific questions about these. As you can tell, in 2019, there was a lot of parking on the sidewalk here. We're seeing a lot less of that. There was limited options here for adding on-street parking given the overhanging garage doors and kind of some of the open curb line. But this parcel also has an off-street parking lot immediately to the west side of the building. Similarly, the building to the east or to the west also has had a culture of parking on the sidewalk, which we're seeing less of, but you can tell that there's a few designated parking spaces immediately in front of that biotech sign. And then there's a parcel to the south, which was interesting for us, Coffee Dan's. They had kind of been parking on kind of their curb line, but they have a kind of an open curb line all the way through. So it's part of this project, and again, this is one of the 4 we're counting as not having an off-street parking facility, though they do have a rear-facing alley. We kept the curb line open for them, and there's kind of, while there's not going to be striped parking immediately in front of the building, if you go 1 slide farther, you can kind of tell that the curb was designed so that there would be an ADA accessible path in between the open curb and the building so that they could continue to kind of park in front of their building. Yeah.
So why wouldn't you mark that area?
We're being very conservative in what we're considering off-street parking here. So we're trying to note that of the 21 property owners in disagreement, only 4 of them could say they didn't have marked off-street parking, and of those, most of them do have an ability to kind of park in some way. So, since the objection, the reason for the petitioning really was the fact that we're changing the parking. We feel like maybe some of the objection was to do bike lanes in the first place, but parking is why we were petitioned the public, and we really wanted to try to address all those concerns. Also, Coffee Dan's, there's a parcel immediately to the west that it shows a different ownership on the county's website, but it's obviously used by Coffee Dan's employees for parking as well. And then once we get past Indiana, we were able to largely do on-street parking on both sides of the street because we had just a little bit more right-of-way to work with. There's some spots where, because of driveways, there's a lot of what we call goring in the street, where there's the large striping rather than on-street spaces. We're including ADA, and you can see where those are marked, ADA spaces to accommodate. But the one parcel here, 1627, it's mostly an off-street parking facility as well. They kind of have the business in the corner, but they have a bit of a closed-in courtyard for off-street parking, and they'll have parking in front of their building, so.
Same thing.
This one, we'll be able to stripe in some on-street parking in front of their
So
building.
this one will be striped?
Yeah. And again, the parking beforehand on a lot of these blocks was time limited in the past, and now we'll be able to stripe it in where they'll be able to park there longer term. Won't have to move their cars at rush hour. All right, the next two property owners that objected here, they, again, both have off-street parking facilities. We left the curb line open for this business at its request. We rebuilt the curb, and then we have, they have a parking immediately in front of their building. The next parcel has an off-street lot immediately on the east side, some angled parking there that kind of feeds back into their rear-facing alley. And on this last block, there were no objections. But altogether, 74 on-street parking spaces that will be striped in, in compliance with all of our code and setbacks from driveways and all the other conflict points to try to make it safer.
So let me just ask on that if I could.
Sure.
So you're saying 74, does that include the 13 for ADA?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, and then how many were there before all this project?
There was no marked parking beforehand. So people
At
were
all?
allowed, people were allowed to park in the outside lane of traffic during limited hours.
Right, so there was no marked parking.
Right.
So when you talk about the 2-hour limit, it didn't apply to anything.
Well, the 2-hour limit just applied to not be, right. There was no 2-hour limit on some blocks. Some blocks had a marked for 2-hour limit and not being able to park there. I think it was 4 to 6 p.m. Because,
Right, but
yeah.
when you would have a 2-hour time limit for parking, that would be in an established parking space.
No.
And you're saying that the area didn't have any established parking spaces?
It doesn't have any, it didn't and doesn't have any striped parking.
Right.
But the signage limits parking from, was it after 6 or 4 to 6? Yeah.
To keep that second lane open?
Yeah, it's so that you couldn't park there at a certain time of day.
Right, because that's what people were doing, is parking in the
In the exterior traffic lane.
in
right.
the exterior travel lane. So that's where the 2-hour time limit would be, to be
Right.
parking in the lane,
Right.
okay?
Yeah, so no, yeah, exactly, against the curb. So as Justin said, this would stripe in 74 on-street parking stalls. They would just be, they wouldn't have limitations, or at least we're not proposing any limitations. And so just in summary, on the mile-long project, only 4 owners are in disagreement that do not have off-street parking lots. If we could go back real quick. And I mentioned that it's a missing section that we hope to improve. So going back to what I said at the beginning, there's between any given time and any given business day, there's between 4 and 7 people parked on the curb. So this would be adding 10 times that in on-street striped parking spaces. And we're happy to answer questions. We went through that fairly quickly. There's a lot of other detail we could provide on a site-specific basis. If you have concerns about specific sites, we can address those. But just for context, if you go to, I looked at my neighborhood super target. Sometimes people are worried about having immediate access. And most of these properties have pretty good access to on-street parking within a short walking distance if it's not right there on the curb. If you go to your neighborhood super target, you're going to walk 70 feet from the closest parking stall to the door. And if you're walking, if you're somewhere out in the middle of the parking lot, you're going to double that. So people don't necessarily have to be right there at the business door, although certainly that's ideal. But we think we've gotten this to a place where we've done everything humanly possible to get parking accessible to as many businesses as possible. And of those 4 that I mentioned, one in particular can't be, there's nothing we can do for them because of the existing overhead doors and the fire hydrant. And others, let me just look at my notes here. So of the three, one property has no access to on-street parking, the one I just talked about. That company is shown as 2 lots, but it's one company and one owner. They have parking at the side of their building, so there would be no way for us to increase the parking over what they had before. Another property has that was protested and does not have off-street parking. They have 3 parking spots in the front of the building. They have room for more alley-fed parking, and they also have, they could potentially park on the side streets. And then the last property is boarded up. It has room for 3 angled stalls in the front of the building, 5 stalls behind the building, and access to 4 on-street stalls directly across the street. Definitely within that kind of reasonable range that I talked about earlier. So, so just in summary, we've got, you know, like we said, those many more. We've got really good, solid parking spaces that are striped and highly visible, that are designed so that the turning radii is going to meet our current specs with regard to turning radii out of driveways, out of garage doors, et cetera. So it's going to be safer for everybody, safer for pedestrians and cyclists. So with that kind of concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer questions. And
Well, I just have one more from your presentation and from the application. The 2-hour time limit, why do you want to get rid of the 2-hour time limit for those 74 spots that you're going to create?
To me, the 2-hour time limit isn't necessarily the biggest issue. The issue is just the ability to stripe the lanes and add the bike lanes, and that really is reducing the lanes from 4 to 2. I'm not sure if there was a reason for what the reason for that was.
I think we were mostly just thinking to alleviate all of the parking restrictions to help accommodate people being able to park here in a easier, more like customer-friendly way.
So there was nothing from the landowners, from the business owners to you guys saying, hey, we want to do away with the 2-hour limit?
No, we haven't heard that.
No, we haven't, but we'd be open to if that concern exists. It's just that there is with the 74, there's so much parking. There seems to be plenty of parking, and so the need for the restrictions is at least debatable.
Okay. So before we move on, anybody up here have any questions? Yes, sir.
This is for Mr. Chai. When were those signs installed that restricted parking from 4 to 6? Because it seems like at some point in time, somebody felt like those lanes needed to be open for rush hour traffic. So I'm just wondering how long ago those signs were installed and what the reason for those signs was. Was it truly for rush hour traffic?
I don't have a date on the installation for those signs, but those go back many years. And at one point in time, you know, prior to like construction of I-235 and other such routes to get people in and out of downtown, there were a lot of surface streets that were used to function that capacity. I mean, Linwood Boulevard was the same way. Main Street is the same way. You'll still come across streets that have got certain restrictions that will clear inbound roads from parking during the mornings, and you'll find others where the outbound lanes are marked with no parking for the typical afternoon rush hour periods, just to help people move in and out. But like I said, there's been so much restructuring, so much in the way of interstate and other major roadway construction that these are just leftovers from probably, I have to guess, 60s at least.
Thank you.
I did have a question. I know that part of the plan was originally to have these as parking protected or car protected bike lanes, and that is gone, and now the protected bike lane is gone. And so we seem to be giving up a lot of bike infrastructure in order to have parking and to adjust to have parking for the business owners there. So is there any consideration in moving those bike lanes on the inside of the parking spaces, or is it just not possible with how the design is working out to accommodate for parking?
So great question. Really, it's another, I described earlier that intersection, that's a pilot project. So Public Works, their desire is to pilot a parking protected bike lane project, and that will actually be on Lottie. That's correct, right? Did I get?
Yes.
So Lottie is being designed that way, and the desire was to pilot that, see how it works for a while, and then perhaps install that same facility in other areas. Personally, I think this would be a great facility for that. There is one downside for those, and it's less parking, and there's a potential that with parking protected bike lanes, the radii are going to be larger, so you lose a little bit of space for parking. But that's really the big, the main reason is because a pilot project was desired, and that is elsewhere.
Okay.
But to your point, it was already kind of downgraded from that and from a protected bike lane to just a standard bike lane. So we hope not to downgrade it further by just having sharrows and making that a tier 3.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, anybody else have questions for these? Yes, sir.
You knew I would. No, I'm kidding. I did sort of my own sort of like analysis of the petitions. First of all, thanks for doing those petitions. I think most of us up here know how much work they are to do in our own little neighborhood work. If I'm incorrect, I probably am incorrect, but I think it's just off a couple or two. What I'm seeing in the inventory of all the petitions is 19 agree and 22 disagree. Checked disagree or agree. Am I about right on that? So
We've got a slide on that if we want to see those pie charts again.
I saw percentages.
Yeah, it's at the very beginning, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then about 43 properties that you couldn't contact, or they were boarded up, or there was just no communication.
beginning.
That's real different than what we're used to seeing here when somebody like the applicant earlier today that was getting a stop sign done, you saw that petition.
Yeah.
I'm not as concerned about the numbers in the petition as I thought I would be now with this explanation, because I was under the impression moving forward with these kinds of projects that we would be dealing with areas where the buildings are all right next door to each other. There's no private off-street parking. It's all on-street parking. There is a tremendous amount of off-street parking in this area, more so than I was aware or that I've been used to seeing on Western Avenue or any other places that I'm familiar with. And it seems as though the resolution for the folks that are in disagreement has been really fairly satisfied with adding these 74 on-street parking spaces and the vicinity that they are in to their front doors. It's just how I feel right now. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else for them? We still have somebody else that wants to speak. All right, thank you very much. Mr. Ladin, did you want to come up and talk? You're up here. Any of you, okay. If you could give your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
John Layden. Our business address is 1529 West Main Street. We're right across the street from Dan's Roastery. Our little business, that's us right there. We've got 8 employees in those 3 parking spots right there. Gibson's allows 2 of our employees to park there, and then usually somebody's on the sidewalk. One of my questions is, once those bike lanes come in, will that affect our ability to park in our 3 spots? Because, going in and out, of course we're going to be careful, but, a bicyclist can come flying by and we come out. Will our parking spots still be viable?
Okay, so let's answer that. So those, just go back to that other picture. Right there. So you're talking the 3 spots under the sign. Mm-hmm. So, sir, if you could come up and answer that question.
Yes, we specifically wanted to make sure that those 3 spots were still viable to park in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, so, see where these are on the curb? Will there be any off-street parking parallel to where those cars are?
To the
Maybe
red.
get them off the curb in case you all say we can't park on the curb anymore.
In this case, there will not be spots to park immediately south. There are some parking spaces on the south, just a little bit to the east there, you can see the routing.
Yeah,
So it's,
yeah, that's Gibson's, and I mean, they're kind enough to let us park a few cars there, but 3 or 4 times a day, that parking lot's full.
right.
They do quite a bit of business in there, and we can't really justify taking their spots, you know.
Right, yeah, and we are including some on-street spaces on the south side there, kind of towards the end of the block, so it might be a little bit of a walk, but there would be some spaces added right there.
Right. Well, okay.
So then what you're saying is, go back one more to the cars that were on the sidewalk. Right there.
There you go.
Okay, so the red car and the white car
Yeah,
will have to go park somewhere else, just down the road a bit, across the street. Am I
well,
right? Well, just from what you're showing, there is on-street parking just down the road on the other side of the street.
Right.
Did you see that, sir?
yeah.
Okay, right there.
I mean,
It would just be in front of 1515, you see those spots, 1, 2, 3,
Right.
4, 5, 6, 7
yeah,
spots.
you know, those
6.
typically are the women's cars, and during the wintertime, when it gets dark, you know, they're not real comfortable wandering down the street. But I mean, we'll have to do what we have to do, I guess. But okay, well, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
If I may, just one more thing about the 2-hour limit. One of the things we've observed too is we believe that most of the on-street parking is employees. It's kind of a lot of light industrial uses. And so by not having the 2-hour limit, you're allowing a lot of people to park there and spend their working day in the business.
So there's not a lot of businesses that are fluid for their traffic flow.
Right. There's a few, but most of them are light industrial where they're manufacturing something or doing kind of.
And they have off-street parking.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else wanted to speak on? Yes, sir. If I could have your name and address, and when you're done, fill out the form for us. Thank you.
My name's Gerald Timms. I'm at 1229 West Main. I have a performance cycle there. My concern is not as much as the parking. We're fortunate that we do have parking. My concern is the traffic issue that this causes. Taking a 4-lane street, basically turning it into a 2-lane street with a bike lane, parking. You already have 3 of the most dangerous intersections there are at Klein and Sheridan. And because you have everybody coming down Main Street, turning on Klein to get on Oklahoma Parkway, you got a stop sign there. You got probation and parole parked in front of there. You cannot see who's coming down Sheridan. I know probably a police officer can tell you how many wrecks has probably been there. That whole area is really congested at 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon during rush hour. If you condense Main Street down to where people are trying to turn off of there, you're gonna create another traffic problem.
So let me ask, is that one of the spots that you created a turn lane? Because wasn't there a couple spots that you did turn lanes?
Really just turn lanes on the 2 arterials at the end on Penn and Western.
Okay, so in this situation, what he's talking about, someone will block traffic to turn left.
Right. They'd stop in the traffic lane to take left. Yeah.
And is that a signal marked road, or is that just a unmarked turn?
See, because you have people coming up Sheridan to turn at Klein to get on Oklahoma Boulevard. It's a stop sign on both sides of Klein, no stop sign on Sheridan. You got people coming Klein trying to get across there. They're backed up to Main. Now you're going to have people backed up down Main trying to get in there. This could have all been corrected had there been an entrance to Oklahoma Boulevard off of Western. Obviously, all of that could have been situated. So it seems to me that we're, I don't know if anybody has the numbers of how many bicycles go down Main Street and how many cars go down Main Street. So it seems to me that we're taking away or impeding traffic to make sure that we got bicycles going down the street.
So then, let me ask staff or you, do you have the numbers of vehicles on Main? what the traffic flow is on Main?
Yeah, on page 2 of your report, the most recent count that we have was from earlier this year, and we showed 3,100 vehicles per day on West Main Street.
And then what's the number of vehicles that would call for a 4-lane road compared to a 2-lane? At what point do you think that you need a 4?
Historically, when you're looking at an arterial roadway, it would typically a tipping point hits around 7,000 or so vehicles per day. That's when the city has in the past looked at widening like a 2-lane arterial to a 4. But in this particular case, the context is different because Main Street's not so much an arterial as it is like a local business access roadway. So, you know,
but there is flow traffic through
It didn't
there.
used to be an arterial until there was no access, you know. That's the only access. You can only access Oklahoma Boulevard from either there or Virginia. So there's tons of traffic. Come down there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and see what's going on, you know. And then the corner at Western where they're trying that pilot, that's ridiculous because if you're trying to turn off of Main Street onto Western right now, you cannot legally make a turn in anything other than a smart car. Because if you've got somebody in the turn lane to turn to get on, you cannot make that turn legally. So I don't think that's a great idea either. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, sir, fill out the form, please. Sir? Oh, we already have? Okay, great. Anybody else wanting to speak on item 5B? Okay, staff?
Well, you've got our report before you. I believe we heard from the applicant and business operators in the area. I don't have anything to add particularly, so if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Okay, did you have something else to say, sir? We already have your information. Just come up to the mic.
You know, this is a lot of, do I need to give my name and stuff again? Okay. This is a lot of trouble for bicyclists, and we've been down there for 21 years, and frankly, we don't see the need. I mean, there's not that many bicyclists running up and down Main Street, and, you know, official bicyclists and the bicyclist gear. There's a lot of homeless on bicycles, but they don't care about lanes. They just drive down the middle of the street, basically. But, I mean, it's just kind of odd that all of a sudden we decided to have a bike lane down Main Street. And,
Well, as the planning people said, this is to tie in 2 other bike lanes that have already been established.
Yeah.
Am I right, sir?
Well,
This goes into trying to
Continuity,
become,
yeah.
well, and trying to become bicycle friendly as a city, which is a very large city.
Right.
But to become bicycle friendly wherever we can.
Right.
And to say that we want that. Same with people walking. We want people to walk. We want people to bike. So this was just tying in 2 already established bike areas. And what we're hoping, of course, is once you set up several miles, people will go there and flow there compared to other roads.
Right.
Let them go to where they need to go.
Well, yeah, I understand. You're hoping to draw the crowd, and I don't know. It just seems kind of
No, that's a good point, though.
before the horse, you know.
That's a
Let's
very
see
good
if-
point, sir.
I have a question for him.
Okay, sir, we do have a question.
I don't remember your name, sorry.
John Layden.
You told us how this would affect you and your employees. How would it affect your business?
Well, I mean, we have, as you can see, we're at 1529 West Main. We're the business that has 3 parking spots in front and on the curb. Well, we have customers that come and they park in the street because, you know, we have such limited parking. So with the bike lanes, we're going to be impeding. They're not there long, you know. They come, we load them full of toilet paper or paper towels or whatever it is they're there to pick up, and then they move on. But once the bike lane is there, I mean, we're going to be.
So
Well, it'll just be, we'll be able to do it. It'll just be an inconvenience, you know? And that's, who wants that, you know? Who wants to?
So they would park in that outer lane and block the lane while they get their stuff.
Right.
Everybody would just
Right.
go around it on the inner lane.
Right. It's, yeah. And it's, you know, it's just progress, I guess. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, one more time out. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5B? We've already heard from staff. Yes, sir, you have something.
A comment that might be helpful is what I have observed with the bike lane facilities that have been installed in Oklahoma City. There's a collateral positive effect from them besides just serving bicyclists. They clean up the street. There's an attractive element to them. The taking this particular street from 4 lanes to 3, which, if I'm stating it correctly, it becomes two-way traffic, one lane, and then a center turn lane. That has a really nice effect too in calming traffic and organizing traffic. So there could be an aesthetic value to this for your businesses along this corridor as well.
Now that they've got that street so nice, I mean, it's like a speedway heading out through there. Yeah, I mean, 40, 50, sometimes even faster. It's pretty wild, you know.
This will help with that. I was also just going to put in that when you have a disconnected bike network, it's like having a cell phone but only being able to call 3 of your contacts because you don't have the ability to connect that network from one place to the other. So being able to have this corridor serve the people that want to use it aren't able to currently use it because they don't feel safe going through your 4-lane road at 45 miles per hour. I don't feel safe riding my bike in that. Having an actual smaller lanes of traffic, but also having a protected bike lane would be wonderful. But having an actual bike lane that I can be in myself and not have to worry about being plowed over it draws out a lot more cyclists who may not feel comfortable riding in the current conditions. And so I think that you will see people slowing down on your street, and it will be a really big benefit for the businesses that are there and generating a little bit more calming for that area as well.
Yes, sir, please, come on up.
I have something to go with that as far as a bike lane. I live downtown as well, so I'm down here all the time. You have Walker as a bike lane on both sides of Walker, yet probably better than 50% of the times the bicyclists are in the traffic lane. So we've spent money after money after money. So either is there something down the road that's going to force them to use the bicycle lane? I mean, I sell motorcycles. I promise you, if I take a motorcycle down the bicycle lane, I'm going to get a ticket. I'm going to get a ticket, right? That's correct. So, you know, although it looks pretty and it's all that, how much is it actually used? How much is it going to be used? Is it worth the traffic problem that it's going to cause to be that?
It will allow a lot more people to use their bikes rather than becoming traffic by using their cars. So it does decrease the amount of people who are using that for their car traffic. I also live off of Walker Bike Lane, and I can count on a single hand the number of times that I've seen somebody ride in the middle of the street, unless it's a pack of people. The majority of people are using that bike lane.
There are some, but it's still the same. There's a bike lane there, and
Sure.
if it's there, then use it.
Sure, I agree. I absolutely
And there
agree.
right now, there's no penalty if you don't. Like I said, if I take my motorcycle in the bike lane, there's a penalty. If I take my car in the bike lane, there's a penalty. So.
All right, very good. Anybody else for 5B?
Quick.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Jeff, isn't there a fairly significant public education, public awareness part to the bike program?
Yes, of course, we wish we could always make it more significant, but we've been partnering with ACOG to, on the not the Better Street Safer City, the Watch For Me program, to encourage bicycle safety, and it's targeted to both cyclists and automobile drivers because they both need to watch out for each other. But we do anticipate doing more of that. We have, in fact, we always have something, whether it's ongoing or whether we're trying to get more grant funds to do something else, which is the case right now, to decrease the number of fatalities, increase safety for cyclists, pedestrians, and motorists. So we're always working on something. We've gone through a couple rounds now of the Watch For Me program, and that's going to continue under ACOG. We'd also like to kind of upgrade our website to make that a better resource for people. And as the bike network continues to expand, right now it's just in its infancy. We want to make that more available, maybe some better mapping for people, and just get better, even down to signage up. We talked about the other day about getting better signage for that protected intersection. So we do have plans, and we have done some things. We want to continue to do more.
Okay.
And I'll just add one thing. I don't like when I see this much disapproval of something when we're going to try to pass, however the vote goes. But from what I can see, 2 of the 21 that disagreed showed up and told us why, because I'd really like to know more what the issues were with it, and it would help me better. So however the vote goes, it might be something you pass on to some of the business owners.
And I think that would have been possible had there been mailers or something to those people. How we found out about this was 2 signs chained because of the area, chained to poles. That's how we found out. Otherwise, I wouldn't know about this meeting. So all these other business owners that aren't here probably never seen the sign. The one at Western and Main's laying on the ground flat. The other one down in front of the coffee shop was up. He's the one that sent that to me. Otherwise, they don't know. They didn't know that this happened.
That's good information.
Well, the points that you brought up were dealing with on-street parking limitations. That's where they identified several business owners that were concerned. Am I right? Was that the big concern of the people that said we don't want it?
Yeah, a lot of people were concerned about the lack of parking. There were some people who just didn't want bike lanes. We heard that some too.
Okay, all right, good.
I had a couple of questions.
Yes, sir, please.
First one on that last point, notification is mandatory, isn't it? I mean, all these business owners would have been mailed something talking about this hearing today.
Technically, no notification is required, aside from posting the agenda with the city clerk and posting it on the city's website.
For any traffic issue? So it's a planning
correct.
commission then has to notify, but traffic doesn't?
Yeah, for traffic, it's not a requirement. The signs that he's talking about, we put out as many as we had available, and they're a courtesy notification sign. Okay. And we put those out if there's going to be like a significant item coming up. Like all we had was 4 signs for this month's meeting, so we had one out over at Ashby and Southeast 69th Street, and then we placed 3 along Main Street.
Okay.
But it's a courtesy notification because, you know, more often than not, area resident, there's a long disconnect between the time an item might be petitioned for and a request goes in to the time it actually appears on an agenda. So it's really a courtesy notification that we provide just to let area, you know, residents and businesses know there's something coming up on an agenda.
Okay. And then the other one made a note of, if there is a bicycle lane, do bicyclists not have to stay in it? Are they allowed to ride middle of the road or wherever? Because that does seem strange that if you go to all the trouble to build the bike lane, they should be in it and not impeding traffic.
As of right now, I'm not aware of a city ordinance that requires a cyclist to be in the cyclist lane if there is one.
Might be something to think about.
Right, and to your point, Commissioner, there's you know, in areas where there are trails running parallel to like area lakes and things like that, cyclists can still use the streets adjacent to them. They're not constrained to use the trails, even though it's probably a better environment for cycling.
Yeah, trails I can see, but a bike lane that we've taken a lane from cars from for that reason, like we're talking about right now. But another question is, you said that traffic count is about 3,000 right now, and you really think 7,000 is a number, so you're fine? The traffic department is perfectly fine reducing the 4 lanes to 2 lanes?
In context, the question relative to 7,000, that's a number that the Public Works Department has historically used when it's looking at potentially widening, taking a 2-lane facility to a 4-lane. That becomes a tipping point. And if you stop and think about it, by the time something's identified and it's running about 7,000 vehicles per day on a 2-lane roadway, there are several years between the time that it's identified and the time that maybe funding and construction can start on widening it. So it's just like an early indicator.
Right. But on this particular traffic department, and again, your recommendation, was it clear that you're fine with taking this down to 2 lanes?
Well, on this particular application, the ultimate decision is going to rest with the commission.
Yeah, I know.
As far as making.
Right. And are we just a recommending body here, or is this the final say, or does City Council make the final decision on this?
What the City Council will receive next is they will receive the accessible spaces for the physically disabled and the removal of the parking restrictions. Those are the actions the City Council will take. As far as where a bicycle lane goes in, and if it will cause a reduction in the number of lanes on a roadway, there's not a process that the commission gets involved in when it comes to looking at that.
Okay, thanks.
Well, just to make it clear, his question, traffic management-wise, this roadway is okay to go from 4 lanes to 2. And as our traffic engineer.
Well, it's also very context sensitive. And the reason why I say that is because there are locations in the city where there's a considerable amount of, there may be low traffic roadways, but they take commercial deliveries. And some of the commercial deliveries that some of these businesses get, if they don't have an off-street lot, then those deliveries will take place from the public roadway. If the parking spaces are in use, it is not uncommon downtown to come across like a semi-tractor trailer that stops in a through lane and other people have to drive around it. I mean, I see instances of that quite frequently on like Sheridan Avenue. I've seen locations where a semi-tractor trailer will park basically in a center median area and make their deliveries because they don't have a lane available to them.
No,
so like I said, it's very context sensitive, and the gentleman sitting in the audience who've got businesses would probably be better able to answer questions like that. Because I don't know when they take their deliveries or how frequently they get it or what format they get their deliveries.
I don't think it's the delivery as much as just the traffic flow. The 3,000 cars a day, does that travel well on a 2-lane?
In the hours of travel, if it's still a 4 to 6 thing, as it was in the signage that's there now, is that still an issue? When is that flow, and is all that 3,000 coming in a 2-hour period? There's no traffic studies to provide.
No, it's not broken down that specifically. I mean, we'll have hourly volumes, but it's not directional volume. So I can't tell you if it's all inbound, outbound. It could be balanced throughout, basically all day long.
Okay. Anybody else?
I understand the need for the connector. I mean, we've already got these others set up, I understand, and I'm for broadening the city's capacity for the bike lanes. But I also have got to respect the guys with the boots on the ground that see this every day, that have to deal with it, because what we decide today, they're going to have to live with on a daily basis. You had said that you had 80 employees, but you have 3 parking spots, which means you have to have 2 others either park in front. If you've got 80 employees and 3 parking spots, that's a problem. And to say you have to go down the street and cross the street in order for your employees to come to work, to me is a little concerning. I understand the need, and I understand that they've done their best to provide those parking spots, but I also understand you guys have to deal with it every day.
Okay. So we're ready. Can I have a motion concerning item 5B?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the application be approved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5B from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
I would like to second.
And we have a second
Thank
by
you.
Commissioner Cornett. Okay, any other talk on this item now? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5B from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Cornett. And just, I'm the one that's messed up. There we go. And now you can vote. Item has approved with 5 in favor and 3 against. Close. Okay, item has passed. We go on now to item 5C, Timothy Johnson, PE, President, Johnson and Associates. All-way stop control at Wild Meadow Lane and Northeast 112th Street. Sir? If I could have your name and address, you got 5 minutes.
Caleb Morgan, Johnson Associates, 1 East Sheridan. What we have is a small residential addition with 22 lots. It has an access on 122nd Street, and the whole frontage for the whole piece of property does not meet line of sight requirements. There's a big hill, and they're kind of at the top of the hill. And it's such that we can't meet the requirements for the line of sight either side. And nowhere we go along that frontage will it meet line of sight requirements. So what we're requesting is stop control on 122nd and also the access road to alleviate that line of sight issue. We've worked with staff on this, and we appreciate their help, and we appreciate the review, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, just for a line of sight, what would be the speed limit for the line of sight that's there? Do you have that info? Or
Excuse me, what would be required for the speed limit to meet
Yes.
the line of sight?
To meet the
It's somewhere around 30, I think, miles per hour.
Okay, so and right now it's 45.
That's right.
So we'd have to slow it down to 30.
Right,
to
and the
meet
issue with
line of
that,
sight.
we've discussed that, and typically you don't take that big of a jump down
No,
to
right.
in speed. But also, in this area, we don't think you could enforce it in such a way. You'd have to have somebody out there all the time to make them go that speed.
Okay, no, I was just wondering, what is the line of sight? What would be the speed?
Yep.
Okay.
Based on the city's criteria, it'd be 25 miles an hour.
25?
Yes.
Okay. And I saw the spot where the 22 houses will go. Go back one more, that one. There's no other place that you could buy land, have access on another road, do anything?
No, we're kind of hemmed in on all sides, and then I believe there's a creek there to the east, which kind of limits us a little bit that way. And also, just anywhere we moved it along there, we couldn't find anywhere that would meet the line of sight.
Anywhere of the property that's owned?
Right.
You're saying from the
Right.
far left to the far right?
Right.
There was no sight distance that allowed?
Right.
It's just on a big hill?
Yep.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How long ago was this plat final approved?
I'm not sure.
About, I mean, recently or
Yeah,
years
recently.
ago?
Within the last year, I think
Last
6
year.
months or so.
And so the planning department was fine with the site distance?
Yeah, I
Or
don't
did
know.
they say if you can get a four-way stop?
They never said that. I'm not sure if they're the ones that regulate that, but we didn't hear any issue, and then I know traffic brought it up during that process.
They did. And there's no way to redesign this so that if you move the stop sign to the east boundary of the property,
You have an issue with sight distance looking west. So as you come down the hill, you can't look over the hill. So it's kind of right in the middle. So if you move one way or another,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5C? Okay, staff?
All right, you've got comments before you. This is kind of an interesting item inasmuch as the Planning Commission has approved the final plat for the tributary addition, and one of the conditions was basically to iron out everything relative to safety and access control at the commission level. The location in question, when I'd been out there to take a closer look at this, as Mr. Morgan mentioned, there's no location across the entire frontage of this piece of property that will meet sight distance looking in both directions. Where this particular intersection is proposed, Wild Meadow Lane, it does not meet sight distance looking in either direction. So in order for residents or future residents to be able to get in and out safely, this intersection must be regulatorily controlled. And whether that's through a traffic signal or all-way stop, I mean, either one of those could be used. In the event a traffic signal had gone in there, for residents coming out onto 122nd Street from Wild Meadow Lane, we would have to post a no turn on red, even because they have you cannot see safely what's approaching from the west side. So they would be constrained. So at this point in time, always stop control is about the only reasonable measure that can be employed out here. Now, as far as issuing a service request for stop control to go in, that will be tied to when they actually start roadway construction on the addition, because to place it any earlier than that will definitely violate driver expectation. This will have to be like we'll have to use high priority warning devices at this location, because it will be very unexpected.
Really?
I mean, you will not expect to be stopping for a minor street at this location. The side street itself will never generate enough volume because it's only got 22 lots.
That's why I was going to say that.
Yeah.
What's the traffic flow on the main street?
Traffic flow on Eastern Avenue currently is running just over 1,000 vehicles per day.
So not that much.
No, not that much, but
It's not a very busy road.
122nd?
Yes. Okay. Did I misspeak? Yeah.
So it's not a very busy road, only 1,000.
As of today, that's correct.
Right. But as that area grows.
Right. And when we went out and did our standard speed studies, and we had an 85th percentile speed of 48, and the highest speed we recorded during our study was 57. So, I mean, the higher you go, the more sight distance you need. I mean, at a posted speed limit of 55, which the 57 would have been adhering to, you need like 890 feet of sight distance. And this location, at best, just has got barely over 300 feet looking one way and about 350 looking the other. So it's not ideal to have to require a regulatory traffic control, but from a safety perspective, there are really no alternatives.
Would it be a good idea to reduce the speed limit a little too, along with this, maybe to 40?
It would be unenforceable for the long haul. It's very rural, and the prevailing speeds in the area are typically about 45. So it would be an anomaly at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have anybody else speaking on item 5C? We've had staff input.
That's it.
Staff comments are before you, as discussed.
Okay, can we have a motion for 5C?
Move approval of the application.
We have a motion to approve 5C from Commissioner George. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schuline. Any talk on this item?
And just to be clear, it's contingent on when construction starts.
That's correct.
Do you know when that is?
I don't know exactly, it'll be within the next year.
Okay, and what we're looking at is once they cut the road and vehicles start going in and out that entry point,
Right.
that's when we need to have the four-way stop, right?
That's correct. But it's also not uncommon for when construction starts on a site that they may opt to use a secondary location during construction. So they may not be at where this roadway is going to go in. They may be accessing elsewhere. But we'll just have to wait and see when actual work starts.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, anything else? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5C from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I read votes? Item has been approved, all 8 in favor. Okay, we go on now to item 5D, Don Hermes and Laura Roberts. Traffic signal at Redbrisk Drive, Gamble's Trail Drive, and Northwest 150th Street. And both are here, one's here to talk, both here to talk? Just you? Okay. If I could have your name, address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Don Hermes, 15400 Blue Jay Drive in Edmond. I actually live in Robin Ridge, and Redbrisk Drive is the exit to 150th from Robin Ridge. And then on the other side, it turns into Gamble's Trail Drive. And so that's where we're asking for a traffic light. And the main reason, well, there's several reasons. We have Scissortail Elementary that's opening this fall. They are going to have, I think it's around 350 students, and you can see where that is. But the other issue is right on that intersection, we have 3 inline strip malls that are actually just now being built. Well, 2 of them are built with 8 businesses in them already. And there's another one that's under construction right now with another 8 businesses that are going in. And that all plans on being done by the end of this year. And also there's 2 new lone standing buildings, an early childhood education, and a dog daycare along with a swim academy. The swim academy's been there for like a year, but all the rest of this is new this year. So obviously the concern is just the traffic, the kids crossing 150th right there. And I know that there's bus service to Robin Ridge, but we also know experience with our neighborhood, people walking to Angie DeBow or even Charles Haskell over by Summit. Then also across from Scissortail, they're finishing, it's Stonehorse Crossing. There's already 300 apartments right now there that exist, and they're building 299 more. And then there's also the apartment condos at the cottages at Quail Village, which is getting ready to break ground. They have 215 homes there. We just feel with all, and there's so much more construction. Tabor has a huge sign out right on 150th there. So obviously they're getting ready to do more building. And it's just, our concern is safety for the kids, first off, but, that intersection is, all the data that we have obviously is historical, so we need to look forward at what's getting ready to happen. And I think, we just don't want it to get to a point where there has to be a fatality for something to be put in place when we kind of need it now with the opening of the school this fall. I think that's, the other thing is that entrance on that Gamble Trails Drive, that is going to be one of the main entrances to the school. You also have the entrance from 145th and Penn. So those are the only 2 ways to get in unless you come from May. But if you come in from May, there's no homes over there that are associated with this school, the layout of the school. So we just foresee a lot more traffic, a lot more issues coming up in that intersection. And that's all I have right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else want to speak on item 5D? Staff?
All right, you've got our comments before you. Currently, the intersection does not have volume or collision history to support the use of signalized traffic control at the intersection. As Mr. Hermes alluded to, there are new developments that are springing up in the area. Those we do not include in studies because we don't have trip generation data that we could include in a planning level study for that. We did do some research, and we did find that Edmond Public Schools, when they open Scissortail Elementary, they will be drawing from the residential area on the north side of 150th Street, but also when looking at their transportation policy, the Edmond Public Schools will be providing bus transportation to those residents across 150th Street in. So as far as an immediate need for school walkers, it is probably unlikely. It's not to say that in the future as additional development occurs, especially on the south side of 150th Street, it might reach the traffic level someday when a signal is needed. So at this point in time, action will be at the discretion of the commission. Should the Traffic Commission approve the request for a signal, the approval needs to include roadway widening for dedicated left turn lanes on Northwest 150th Street for safer left turn access to Redbrisk Drive and Gamble's Trail Drive. Approval of a traffic signal without the inclusion of turn lane improvements would not afford left turning drivers the ability to do so with a protected left turn phase. And if you were to look at a bigger picture along Northwest 150th Street, every signalized intersection there is on that corridor has got dedicated turn lanes, so that would be something that would be expected. So action on this item will be at the discretion of the commission. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
May I say one more thing?
Yes, please, come on up, sir.
I know that you have to look at the actual data on the car wrecks. I'm not sure how they're missing the car wrecks. I mean, I have witnessed accidents there last year in 21, and the day that I sent my letter in asking for a traffic light, there was a bad wreck there that required an ambulance, and there was a wreck literally 2 weeks before that. So I don't know if we're close enough to 150th and Penn that they're reporting in the wrong spot, but and like I said, I know you have to go off the data you're given, but there's definitely been lots of wrecks there.
Right. Were the collisions that you were talking about, did they occur in 2022?
Two of them two of them were in 2022, but I have also witnessed at least, I witnessed one in 2021. My neighbors have witnessed several.
Okay. Well, I was about to say, because when state law changed basically to like a quick clearance, there are a lot of incidents that we no longer see crash reports for. Unless a vehicle's disabled and the police department works something and a report is filed and then goes to the Department of Public Safety, we won't see it in the database that we access.
Okay, that makes sense then.
And it could be that those were the type of wrecks you might have been referring to. And like I said, the 2022 data we don't have any access to.
All right, thank you. Yes, you have a question.
Since the school was brought up, Stuart, will school zones be installed once the school is open?
We have not been contacted by Edmond Public Schools with regard to a school zone there. Now, at this point in time, they would have to send in a request, but since they're providing bus transportation for everyone, I mean, it's everyone on the north side of 150th Street is offered transportation, even though they could be within less than a half a mile from the school. So we've not received a request for anything at this point in time. And I'm not sure which route the buses will circulate in and out. For all I know, they may be coming in off of Pennsylvania Avenue, and 150th Street may not be, crossing at Redbrisk Drive and Gamble's Trails. That may not be where they do their crossings. We do not know.
So in order to put you would have to have a request from it. Okay, thank you.
And my question is, and for funnies, say we approve this, when actually would they see a stoplight?
That's an excellent question. This particular signal, I've got, let's see. The tail end of your report on page 4, it says that there's no existing funding sources identified for new traffic signals approved by the commission. So should the signalized control be approved, the improvements will be added to an unfunded projects list, and projects on the unfunded list are typically considered during the planning of new general obligation bond projects by the city. Now, the city's got a number of different funding mechanisms that it can use for building traffic signals. You can get funding, you can apply for federal aid assistance through the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments. That is a long, drawn-out process because typically you'll apply for funding in 1 year, and it's typically several before you get it. The most recent word I've heard is that the next bond may come out somewhere in the neighborhood of 2027. And there are about 9 other signals, I believe, right now that have been approved by the commission in the past that are still awaiting funding. And some go back to, as early as like 2015. So they're still on the unfunded projects list. So we're accumulating a list that we will be submitting for funding. So there's no way to tell, but it would be safe to say that it'll be several years out, even if approved today.
Well, and that brings 2 questions. Who's the one that says it's now going to get funded? What body says that? So that's the first question. And the second question is, who fights that body to say, move this up and move this down? So it's a double question there.
Those are great questions. A lot of times, if a project needs to be advanced because the city is seeking like federal aid assistance, that will move it along in the process. And usually those have a tendency to move a little bit better because ordinarily speaking, like an intersection safety project, depending on how much of the project is roadway versus how much is signal, a city could get potentially up to 100% in the way of federal aid funds for it, but it's a process to get there. As far as setting schedules for the projects, or even on the 2017 bond, there's the order in which projects are being done is always subject to flux. A lot of it's driven by, there might be increased demands, and so that may make it more pressing for the city to invest in a certain area sooner than in other areas. It's very much in flux, and to say that there's there's one centralized source that makes a decision that these projects go this year, these projects go the next. It's always subject to change. I mean, and
So is that,
citizen
would,
input
is
to their
that,
elected members is always encouraged when it comes to expressing their views and interests.
but is that within Public Works? Is that a Public Works kind of thing that?
Not entirely, no.
No.
No, that could be even at the city council level, if something comes up that becomes important enough.
Right, but I'm saying, but the people that make a choice, that says, okay, here's the unfunded traffic signals, we want to do 2 or 3. So who kind of decides what 2 or 3?
Usually, if it's going to be bond funded, staff will make recommendations, and like the bond advisory committee will be the one that will get to review it, because it's not purely a staff decision. It's subject to, you know, a lot of review and interpretation by others.
And the key is if you're in that area and there is an unfunded signal light, you should be talking to your city council.
Yeah.
City council person.
Yeah, because
City councilor.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a representative form of government we
Right,
have. And
who then can, those are the people that can work with staff to work on why it's a very important area that needs to move up. It's the city councilor that does that.
it certainly can be done that way, yes.
Right. But that's how citizens can make sure that this gets moved, that a thing in their area can be looked at more favorably and quicker. It's by being the squeaky wheel. Right, okay?
You could get it, I'll start at the beginning. I can't tell if you're representing a neighborhood association or if you're acting on your own. Are you just as an individual requesting this?
Sir, up on the mic, please.
I run our neighborhood Facebook group, and we all just kind of been chatting on it. And so, yeah, I'm kind of like a spokesman, but yeah, I'm not officially on the board or anything.
Well, that's good. That's good to know, and that's a good start. But we see a lot. We have seen a lot of these conditions with neighborhoods that open up onto these types of streets, and one of the shortfalls in solving the problem is the timing and the funding.
Right.
The most successful route to speed up, the only part that's possible to speed up, in my opinion, is an organized neighborhood association where you have a real effort within that community, working closely with a city council person who can work very closely to see that it gets on a bond at some point in the future. It's just it's been sort of my experience with my neighborhood work. I've got stormwater issues and all kinds of things like that. But you will get so much farther with this effort if you don't have a neighborhood association.
We do.
Ask for a meeting, a formal meeting, bring it up at the meeting, take back what you've learned here, discuss what the neighbors want. You know, you might discover that you're the only one that wants it, who knows, but it's unlikely. But that's where the power is in the public work that you need to do to get this moving forward in a serious way.
Right. Of course, if you say no, there's no moving forward, period. So.
You can reapply.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's a time limit, you know.
Yeah, 6 months.
In 6 months, you could bring it back, but
okay.
And visit with your city councilman before you bring it back.
Sure.
It's my recommendation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so we're now ready. We need a motion concerning item 5D.
Well, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve, and here's why. You know, the statistics show that it's not warranted at this point in time, and I can agree with that. But with a 5 to 10 year sitting on the waiting list, although several people have talked about, well, how do we get it going faster? But I think it's probably, there's no doubt in my mind that this intersection will need one, and we'll have all the warrants for one at some point. As that huge development across the street from his neighborhood finishes out, and I'm sure whoever developing that wishes it was going quicker than it is, but you know, it's a square mile right behind Coil Springs Mall. And yeah, it's not developing as quickly as they had hoped, I'm sure, but it's developing. And as that keeps coming and keeps coming, that intersection will definitely need a light. So that's my reason to go ahead and approve it now, get it on the list, because in 5 to 10 years, okay, now we need it. Oh, guess what? Another 5 to 10 years down the road. So that's my reason.
So your motion is to approve,
it.
include staff recommendations?
Yes, with the widening and the turn lanes and all that, yes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I want a second, and I want to tell you why. I drove this area this morning. My office is 1.5 miles away from here, so I said, let's go check it out. And exactly what Kevin said is, it's developing so fast around there. It's going to take forever to get your stoplight. That's why I asked the question. I knew the answer, but I wanted you to hear it from them, not from me. So they're definitely going to need one. I'm really concerned for these kids. It doesn't matter if there's a stoplight literally just 3.5 blocks to the west.
Right.
It's not going to matter. There's no good way to get around to that stoplight coming from the school either, because the kids won't go around anyway just to go to stoplight. So.
Right.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, sir. Sorry.
Forgive me. I'll keep the momentum going. One of the things that we forget about that is so important in situations like this, when we're talking about the need for something like this as a result of a development that, in your words, you use huge and et cetera. I don't understand why these neighborhoods aren't working with their city council persons and going to these developers when these are landing on the planning commission and insisting that the developer recognize what this is going to do there, and the developer writes the check for that, and they come before us and they request this light, and it's paid for already. That's how this should be working. And I don't think it's too late for a city councilman to go back to some of these developers and see if it couldn't be sped up further that way. I appreciate this flip-flop. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to add one little piece. When items used to go to the Planning Commission with respect to like traffic improvements, developers now pay traffic impact fees. They pay park impact fees and they pay traffic impact fees. And so traffic impact fees are collected, and they too can be a source of funding that's used to help offset the cost of these things. Now, whether or not there's enough money to meet all the demands based on the traffic impact fees generated or collected, which have to be spent in their impact areas, and there's like 14 impact areas. There's just another avenue for it. But as far as developers being required to build traffic signals or other improvements at in conjunction with their development, that's no longer a requirement. It's now building impact fees paid, or traffic impact fees paid at the time that building permit applications are.
I agree, and in theory that probably will prevail at some point in time, but there are still developers that are willing to finance these things.
Oh, yeah.
So it's always worth a shot to ask every resource.
Okay. Anybody else wanted to speak on item 5D? We have a motion to approve 5D with staff recommendation from Commissioner George, seconded by Commissioner Varnell. Votes, please. Item has passed with all 8 in favor. Thank you for your time, sir. Okay, we go on now to item 6, comments from citizens. Anybody want to come up and talk? Okay. We'll go on now to item 7, reports from traffic commissioners, et cetera. So we'll go to, we did it last time. We're going to do it here so I don't forget it. We'll go to Commissioner Cornett.
Why, thank you. I just wanted to comment that I have seen the leading pedestrian intervals, and if you guys pay attention, if there are actually people out there walking today on your way out, and somebody pushes that button, there are so many of them that are active right now, right around here, that I get to see all the time, and it's really fun to watch. Like, oh, you're safe now. This is great. Nobody can turn into you. So I love it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Commissioner George.
Nothing today. Thank you.
Commissioner Schuline.
I just want to compliment the Planning Commission staff for their extra efforts to coordinate with all of the landowners along Main Street. So I know that was not easy, and I think he did an extraordinary job at trying to accommodate each of their needs. Thank you for that.
Go to Commissioner Hale.
Nothing, sir.
Commissioner Russell.
I'm good.
Commissioner Littlefield.
I'm too tired to say anything.
And to Commissioner Barnell.
Yes, thank you to the Planning Commission. It's not a perfect plan. I did vote against it, but it was, I think it's as good as we can get it, maybe. It was the big thing I looked at when I got my agenda last week, that and the light by my office. But again, it's not a perfect plan, but thanks for everything you've done there.
Am I allowed to backtrack?
Well, sorry, where's my gavel? Yes, sir, please.
I was going to say it, I just don't want to labor it, but what I was expecting to see here was a crowd of disgruntled property owners with what did I say that I counted here? 22 disagreements? And I expected to hear a lot of conversation about, you're taking away my parking, you're taking away my parking. There was a question asked directly to one of these gentlemen, how he felt that this would affect his ability to operate his business, and he really didn't express that it would. So it was a surprise to me, and the biggest surprise to me was the lack of people that had an opportunity to come, and the availability of all of that parking that I wasn't aware of, looking at it 4 times over the weekend. So when I work here, and this is a Rob editorial, when I have to look at petitions in particular, when I see some like I saw with that neighborhood, the very first application today, there was not a single disagreement on that whatsoever. You know, this one had so many people that could not be reached or contacted or didn't exist or whatever, and so close on the disagreements and the agreements that in this public process, what I depend on is for citizens to come forward. And we talked about, you know, there's no public notice sent out or anything like that, but every citizen in the city needs to be aware, if they're not, that every commission, every board, their agendas are public. You go to okc.gov, they're all right there. You know what's going on. You know what's going on in your neighborhood. And if that district had been organized or could get organized, you know, a business district like a neighborhood association, you're much more privy and much more accessible to this kind of information, that there's a meeting coming up and how do we feel about it as a group, blah, blah, blah. So that's what I'd like to see. That's what I like to see. Unfortunately, you know, not every area in the city is like that, but that's it. I'm done. Thank you.
I have a comment on that same topic. It's surprising that on something this dramatic of a change for a whole mile of businesses, that they would not, although these guys went out and talked to them, I guess, and had some contact with most of them, but that they would not get noticed that this is getting ready to happen to your business. It's just surprising that we would not, and I can understand maybe a 4-way stop sign not having to mail out to, even that though, you know, maybe 7 houses each way or something should get notice. It's just surprising that we don't have to send notice, and especially in something this large, but.
So what you're asking is to have the counselor's office look at getting it into an ordinance if it's the right thing to do.
Right,
right?
You want a report?
I mean,
No.
no, but to change something this large, I mean, you know, almost, you know, we're traffic, but it's almost like a city planning issue more than just a single traffic issue.
Well, maybe just have the staff in the counselor's office and other staff agencies think things like us here, is there some need to notify people
Yeah.
of things that are happening. Now, the staff went ahead and got those little portable things, and they
Right.
put that
Yeah,
out.
no,
That
that's-
was something that he started
That did.
back, but by ordinance, like with planning, where they say the 300-foot thing, you gotta get 300 feet, you gotta send different things.
I don't know.
What is the right answer? I'm not saying that we
Yeah,
know
no,
the answer,
this,
but
this was a special circumstance,
Right.
and this doesn't come up very often, I understand, but, maybe if it's something that a large-scale project that the city or the planning department is bringing to us, maybe there should be notice on that. Since it's
Well-
their requirement to send notice to when they're changing their things.
well, we weren't here to approve going from 4 lanes to 2. We were only here to talk about the ADA parking.
Huh?
We were only here to talk about the ADA parking and the removing the 2-hour time limit.
Right.
Because that was our recommendation.
So
to
the 4 to 2 is not approved yet?
The 4 to 2 is, the city just wants to do it, then they do it,
They don't need approval from anybody?
through the staff function. Through
Staff only? Oh, okay.
Normal staff
Wow.
function. Yeah, we were only going that, hey, they're doing this, are we okay with creating 13 ADA? And are we okay with doing away with the 2-hour time limit? And once we said that we were, everything else was just talk.
Gotcha. Okay, well,
Is that what you were gonna say?
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
So what you're suggesting is like a 300-foot notification. I appreciate it.
I just think, when your business is involved and it's going to have some effect to it, that you ought to get notice, that's all.
I agree. And a good example of where that can go south is like in my neighborhood, for example, in 2007 or whenever it was, there was an application to, wipe out a whole 2 streets and put in a shopping center. And the 300-foot notification only went to about 2 or 3 different people's homes because the land that the 300-foot was being applied to was so, and if the neighborhood hadn't been organized, those 2 or 3 people wouldn't have known what to do with it and shared it with a group of people. So it's like the question becomes, well, does everybody have to get notified about everything that anybody is deciding on a particular day, or do citizens have a responsibility to be aware of what's going on in their community and their environment? And I'm not trying to be, I'm just saying it's really difficult, even if you do notify people, to get people to participate.
Yes, sir.
There's been more than one time we've had a neighborhood come and they've asked for a stop sign. And Stewart's pointed out that if we put the stop sign where you're asking for, then this homeowner's going to lose any on-street parking.
Right.
Which would be a handy piece of information to have
Yeah.
if you are that resident.
Right.
To know that, hey, this is about to go before the commission, this is going to affect me and my ability to entertain. So I could see Kevin's point to where some form of notification might be advantageous, even in a neighborhood situation.
Yeah.
And we do, changes in neighborhoods, we always put out a sandwich board advertising it. And typically, our agenda's published on the Wednesday before the Monday meeting. In this particular case, we actually published it Tuesday, and so the signs were already out come Wednesday.
Right.
So, and that was just along Main Street because we were short on signs, and it wasn't until the end of the week that we were able to get one over at Ashby Terrace and 69th Street.
Gotcha. Last thing, that vote was 5-3. If it was 4-4, what would have happened?
Then it's a no. Then
A
it's
tie
not
is a no?
approved. Yeah,
Okay.
a tie is a no.
Correct, it takes a majority to pass.
But it doesn't go, like, they can
Well,
reapply
no,
or?
Well, if it's not approved, then there could be a new motion
A new motion, okay. Thanks.
that would change the flavor of it or whatever, that could make it a 5-3 or something. Right, Counselor?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, so we're finishing up. Captain, you got anything?
No, I don't have anything, thank you.
Thank you very much. And just want to say, we have our new captain. He's in charge of Bricktown. So, yeah. Thank you. Okay, Counselor's office, anything else for us?
I'll do it.
I'll do it. Staff? Anything else? Anybody else have any other business for the Traffic Commission? All right, we stand adjourned.